So how has the day been for you guys? Are you excited for the presentation or are you bored till now? Excited, right? So let's begin with our presentation, Threat Intel Strategies Against Malware Threats. So before we even jump into our introduction, let's see how many of you guys are actually working professionals. Oh wow, I expected a lot more, but it's fine. And how many of you are students? Yes, there are a couple of students too. So if you are students, some of the concepts and the words itself will be too complex for you. I'll say keep your phone ready, Google it, and then note it down also if you like. And then that's how we'll keep it very interactive. In the sense, we'll be presenting a lot of case studies explaining what we did. And let's jump in. So I'm Pavan Karthik. I'm a threat researcher at CloudSec. So I've just graduated last year, and then it's been 1 year of full-time experience for me. And then I do a lot of malware research, not reverse engineering kind of guy, but I do malware research. At the end of the presentation, you'll know what kind of research I do. And I also do CRQ. So at CloudSec, we are building something new. So I'm learning cyber risk quantification. And apart from that, threat intel, that's the main role even my name contains. And I do a lot of automation. For a security professional, I feel all of you might have a coding, you might have a coding phobia also. So I'm also that kind of a guy. Whenever I do coding, I use a lot of ChatGPT and Stack Overflow. Who doesn't, right? And then Abhishek.
Hello, I'm Abhishek. So I too work at CloudSec. I specialize in OSINT and HUMINT.
So this is a just disclaimer for corporate folks. So whatever we show here, right, it's not a straightforward solution. Whatever you guys are implementing right now, if you're in SOC role or if you're in a malware research role, so this will help you do a research in a very unconventional way. And then to fully benefit from it, you have to go back home, check what we have presented, and then do more research about it. Only then you'll get the full experience out of this. And then, right now, most of you would have known about IBM's cyber threat report, which has released very recently, right? So according to IBM, right, 70% increase of usage of stolen credentials. So like in 2023, there was a little, use of stolen credentials was still there, but 70% got increased now. And then out of these all hackers, right, 32% of the people who were involved in ransomware activity, they preferred stealing and selling the credentials instead of doing ransomware activities. That's crazy, right? They're moving away from ransom because there are a lot of policies which companies are implementing. Even if they get attacked, they have fail-safes to get back up, and then ransomware, so that's why they're moving away from that. And then the last one is like straight out crazy because 266% of upsurge in usage of infostealers. Have you guys all heard of infostealer? Or simple word, virus. Virus which steals your passwords is an infostealer. And then the number of families, like the number of strains of malware, like the number of types of malware is 97 families. So there are 97 types of malwares, and then every strain has a different variant of it again. So it's like your code only. If you have a Chrome OS, right, Chrome browser, right, it'll have different versions of it, right? Similar to that, it'll also have different versions of it, and then there are multiple families of the same malware. And then this is one more screenshot from the same IBM report. Here you can see from last year, which was at 16%, it risen by 14% in this year, which is basically usage of valid accounts. So valid accounts for a cyber criminal activity to be done, they need initial access, right? So how do they get the initial access? When you do VAPT, you try to search for exploitable public applications, so that is in the third place, which is at 29%. There are other two which are above them, which is phishing and valid accounts. So how do they get valid accounts? Because of the malwares. Malwares steal the information, and if they find them valid, they will be utilized in cyber criminal activities. And then there is phishing. Phishing was reduced actually from 41% to 30%. You'll understand more in this slide. So this is basically how much how malware spread, right? These are called initial infection vectors. Uh, it's basically like how the malware was delivered to you. Malvertisement is one. Basically, you see ads everywhere else, right? You might have been seeing, so my dad sees Facebook ads by Mukesh Ambani to invest in some stocks. So this is a kind of malvertisement only, right? And then, so from Q2 2023, it was like it's a straight line up. It's like 250% increase in malvertisement. So what does that mean? Every Google search you do, I mean, every day you use Google, right? Every Google search you do, if you are searching for anything free, there is a slight chance that what you find is malware. So that's how the Q1 2024, it's 79% of the whole malware delivered is from malvertisement. And then there is drop malware, then there is mal spam. All these are like almost kind of not helpful for cybercriminals because mal spam, every organization has their own phishing detection tools, and they also give a lot of employee training, so that also gets prevented. So now we know what are the infection vectors. And then the top 10 malware, which got like in the last quarter. So SOC Gaulish is one. I mean, if you ask me to speak, I can speak hours about SOC Gaulish. But it's a simple malware, which is a browser-based one. It uses JavaScript injection. So think about it as malware using your browser to hack another website itself. So it's basically trying to brute force other WordPress sites. But how do they brute force it? For every brute force attack, there is rate limiting which you can do, right? If you rate limit from that IP, it's preventing DDoS, or actually DOS. You can't brute force or use the same different passwords. There's a set limit for that. But SOC Gaulish, every person who opens a compromised site, like any WordPress site, it uses your browser's network to basically send like brute force requests to other sites so that it's like a chain. One site gets compromised, and until that owner of that site uses and comes to know that his site got compromised, they'll keep trying to hack other WordPress sites. So do any of you know that WordPress has a vulnerability of user enumeration? Anyone knows? You guys know, right? So WordPress, that user enumeration gives them username. Like you might have, so I came from a CTF background. So the first box which I did was something related to Mr. Robot. So that Mr. Robot box also had something similar to that. He needs to get a username. Once he gets a username, then he tries to get a password. So SOC Gaulish is one type of malware which does that. And then what do they drop? They drop anything from a normal ad bot to a ransomware. So it's that crazy. 60% of it is just a dropper. So dropper is basically, it's like giving the payload and goes. And then there are a lot of anti-detect mechanisms. So a lot of EDRs, XDRs might know this word. So if you upload a malware in VirusTotal or any Avast or something like that, it will detect it if it is malicious or not, right? But these people, even though they detect as malicious, they won't actually get the final sample which it is supposed to execute, because it has coding breakpoints which will be set. Like if it checks if there is specific, let's say, Windows policy enabled, don't execute, because they have a higher chance of getting detected. The higher chance of, if it gets detected, all the researchers will write rules to prevent that same sample from getting executed. So they have a lot of such fail-safes also. And then one interesting thing, they use, all of you would have known C2, right? C2 infrastructure. So they use Steam, Telegram. You have your own usernames, right? They inject, they just give their IP addresses there. And then whenever the malware executes, it doesn't reach directly to the IP. It checks Steam, it checks Telegram. And in that Telegram, the IP address is actual malicious IP address is there. So basically, if that actual C2 is taken down, that Telegram account is still there. That Telegram account can change its names. So in that way, they use fail-safe C2s also. And then that are all the tactics. And then these are all some malwares. So CoinMiner is mining software, mining malware. And then Nanocore is one of a botnet. Botnet is used for DDoS again. And then a lot of other stealers. And then now you know that what's happening in the actual threat landscape, right? It's full of malware. How do you protect from these? There are a lot of actual solutions provided for your organizations, like XDR, EDR. You have your own SOC teams which keeps monitoring all these stuff. But I feel like most of the time it will be reactive. Some do proactive. I'm not saying no one does proactive. There is proactive, but most of this presentation is to basically urge you to move to proactive research. Now, coming to cyber threat intelligence, how many of you know how many types of cyber threat intel are there? Anyone? Okay, there are two types. One is internal CTI. Internal CTI is basically, let's say you have a firewall. How will a firewall detect if there is any anomalous behavior or not? Very simple. You guys know about Bangladesh bank heist? How did that happen? In the off time, there were login attempts. So internal CTI detects there were off-time login attempts and marks it as anomalous behavior. So you have access to all your internal telemetry at one point. You might have heard of SIEM and SOA solutions. They pull in all the data and you get insights out of it. So that is internal CTI. And then detection of insider threats. I've heard the previous speaker speaking about insider threats. So here, how do they detect insider threats? How does internal CTI detect insider threats? Any idea? Like, what would an insider like to do? He wants the juicy information. He wants the trade secrets, all these things, right? So how does he get all these? There are certain parts of any company's infrastructure which is very restricted, right? If any request goes into that, that all should be monitored. If there is any like malicious or anomalous activity which is out of line, that gives you these kind of information. So basically having SIEM, SOAR, XDR, EDR, all these sets a baseline for you to say this is how it normally is. If it deviates from this format or from these patterns, just alert me. So those are the anomalies. And that's how internal CTI finds out there is an upcoming threat. It's basically predicting that you will be attacked. And then finally, misconfigurations and vulnerabilities. You have whole list of, I think there is something called SBOM. So each and every application which you build will have that SBOM. You know versions of each and every application which you internally use. So with those, you can try to find out misconfigurations and vulnerabilities, common misconfigurations. So a very simple example. There was one Microsoft SSO bypass, auth bypass. Do anyone know about that? Like it's a very simple bug. You can basically sign in as any user. It's not even a bug, it's a feature which they implemented. Anyone knows? So there are two types of email IDs in Microsoft's like AD, Active Directory. So one is the principal ID. So principal ID is that unchangeable thing. It's immutable. Even if you have AD admin access, you can't change it. Then the second one, it's the actual email. Like you can give your personal email, you can give your work email, any email. So what did some companies who implemented SSO login do? Instead of using this principal ID, they used this specific, like the interchangeable one. So what happened? For anyone to hack any or sign in as anyone, so what they did, they basically create their own Active Directory. They give the email as whom they want to, whose account they want to take over, and then they finally will be able to take over if they sign in using their Microsoft account. So you can check about it. It's not my research. Someone published. I found out that misconfiguration was there, and I checked it for other people, and then it worked. And that is how, like, it's basically that if you have this vulnerability, there is a chance that this can happen. Basically, before even the bug bounty people or criminals do that, you will find it out. And then coming to, like, it's all theory, I'll just skip it out. So the next one is external CTI. What is external CTI? So basically, we operate in this area. We help companies who are internal, like who are for internal SOC teams. We provide data. I mean, I'll not make it a sales pitch also. They strictly told it shouldn't be a sales pitch, so I'll not speak about any of my product or my company's products. So external CTI is basically, let's say, your company has a view of your own environment. You know what all is happening inside. But for you to know what is happening outside, it's a very hard job. Let's say you want to scrape the whole internet. Can you alone do it? Like, even if your company has money, they need to invest time, they need to invest resources. All these things should be there, and only if it clicks, your own external CTI will be there. But there are other vendors who give you external CTI resources, who tracks threat actors, and then even if you have a specific tech stack, they try to give you relevant threat intel, which is like if, let's say, new WordPress vulnerability has released, and you use WordPress, they alert you. Those kind of information external CTI does. And they also track techniques, tactics, and procedures, so they are called TTPs. So they track all these TTPs of all the threat actors, whoever is active on dark web forums, etc., APT groups, all these. So they monitor how they act. So I'll give you a pretty simple example. There was this guy called Shopify guy. So what does he use? For his, like, he's a cyber criminal. What does he use as his initial access? The name itself says, right, Shopify guy. He uses Shopify. And then he steals data and he sells it. So this is very simple, but most of the threat actors will have that letified usernames and all. So you'll need to check what all tactics they use. When they infiltrate your systems, like, you'll have honeypots. Honeypots actually detect these kind of anomalies, and that will help you in future investigations. And then practice proactive defense. So this is basically having honeypots, having that red team, blue team activities. So this will help you to understand how to act when there is actual cyber threat. And then finally, the threat landscape is always changing. Internally, it is very hard to monitor, but externally, vendors who provide external CTI are able to do these. And then, as my presentation itself is about malware, we'll just cover what is external and internal in terms of malware. So the source of external CTI, it's gathered from outside the network. So it could be from other companies' telemetry, which is provided by your XDR, ADR. And then there are a lot of sources like Malware Bazaar, there is Malpedia. All these give samples for a specific strain of malware. And then internal CTI. So these are any anomalous detections, like you have agents sitting in each of your systems, right? So these are generated within your network. And then data, so external CTI is malware samples, indicators of compromise, there is threat actor profiles, TTPs, all what they do. And then for internal CTI, it's security alerts, which is generated and moved to your SIEM. And then there is logs, malware analysis results. So all these things are considered to be internal CTI. And then purpose, external CTI is an early warning. Even if you are not vulnerable, it'll warn you that you have this tech stack, do something to protect it. And then for internal, it is basically after an incident happens, you need to detect, like it's part of detection, investigation, containment, and then remediation. And then finally, example for this, I think I've already covered. So for external, it is threat feed warns of a new ransomware. So basically, there'll be feeds which says there is Lockbit who is targeting banking sector now. So now you'll know that, oh, okay, I'll need to see what Lockbit is doing. I'll need to see if the same things are there for me or not. A very simple example, guys. So ransomware group last year, there was Clop ransomware. So Clop, what they used to do was, there was something called MoveIt as a vulnerability. So once MoveIt got released, every single activity of theirs was tied back to MoveIt. So if you had MoveIt, you are vulnerable. And then once I don't even know why nearly 200 companies got compromised because of Clop. So external CTI helps you in that kind of things. And then internal CTI, IDS flags a malware download, and then it basically investigation ensures. So malware download, I don't know how people download malware in corporate environment. Even when I do malware research, so just a disclaimer, I got compromised when I was in college. I used to play a lot of games. I used to download pirated games. Please don't record this and put it anywhere. But I got compromised. When did I know that? So there is no company which actually provides individual dark web monitoring. But Google, they have that Gemini Pro which got released, and I purchased that. So then I came to know that they have this feature called dark web monitoring. And then it showed that I got compromised by InfoStealer malware only. Like back when I was in college. I didn't know about all of these things. But then those kind of detections, I didn't have any antivirus. Even if I had antivirus, the game only tells, turn off your antivirus, otherwise your game is not installed. So people do that. And then I've seen it a lot of times in actual corporate environments. So those kind of things, IDS, you can't turn it off. Your IDS has the admin privileges. So IDS will flag those, and then you'll basically train them again saying, why do you do this? Do it in your own personal systems. And even if you do it in your personal system, your corporate credentials shouldn't be stored in your personal system. So those are actually the things which happen. So those are the things which we are discussing. And then now let's discuss the real stuff, all the case studies which we did, and then how the malware tactics we researched about. So the things to cover. So first step, how malwares deliver is using SEO poisoning as discussed. So I'll show you how we detected a huge campaign in YouTube, how we stopped it also with collaboration from an international agency. And then the second one is tracing the malware logs for source of infections. Now, all these info stealers, right, they sell those information. Even if you get those information, you still need to understand how did they get compromised. That will help you to prevent such things from happening again. So that also we'll see. And then there is one more research, clear fake. So this was one malware strain researched by Sequoia. We did some more investigation on top of that, which led us to some good findings that also we'll be presenting. And finally, Abhishek will be presenting about human-driven research, how it helped us crack a big TTP which malware was executing. And then finally, we'll see how dark web research will help you in like fast-tracking your research. So SEO poisoning, it's just simple. You can see the screenshot where like some videos have been posted. So this is a AI-generated video. And this is for Photoshop. Here you can see the name also. And then some Premiere Pro software. And then all of these have like 5,000 views, 3,000 views, 4,000 views. And then which channels we posted this? It's not actually new channels. See, some which are with Preeti, I don't know Hindi, but so this seems to be an actual legit channel. And then Dakar, Click Media, so it is also some foreign channel. And MMA Talk. So MMA is that fighting organization, I guess. So all these channels, how did they get compromised? There was one campaign which was happening just to compromise YouTube channels and use that YouTube channels to post videos. So that was how they initially targeted SEO. So when you post YouTube videos and have specific keywords, anyone from marketing team here? No one? Okay, so basically they have tags and all. They put a lot of tags in the video description, right? So they use that for SEO. And then why is it called SEO poisoning? They poison the actual results. So when you search for Adobe, adobe.com should be first, not a malware, right? So they do SEO poisoning, and there was one situation where actually a malicious site was on top of Adobe. Imagine how critical is that. A lot of people who are, overaged or who doesn't know tech, they click on the first one which they see, and if the first one doesn't work, second one, third one, fourth one, all of them are malwares. They get infected multiple times. So that's how SEO poisoning is. And the statistics of it, right, for YouTube. So in approximately 2 months, we track nearly 3 lakh videos getting posted. So 3 lakh videos is a huge number. And from those 3 lakh videos, there were 800 unique malware samples which got detected. And then out of them, 10 malware variants. So even in that 800 samples, only 10% of them got actually detected by a sandbox. So that means there are 90% of them which escaped escaped in the sense they prevented detection at all. But they are still malwares. How do I know? Because I used very specific keywords to track them. So let's say YouTube was there. So in the previous slide, you can see the keywords are free download, Adobe Photoshop, free download, no crack, illegal, and some keywords like that. What did I do? I used YouTube search for that specific keywords. You know Google docking, right? Use Google docking. And using that keywords, you'll be able to get all the videos itself. And then you might say there might be false positives, but who gives you free stuff away for free? And even if it is free stuff, they take it down because it's an actual premium software, right? So that's how it was. And in 2 months, it gathered nearly 1 crore views. In 1 crore views, let's be very optimistic. Let's say only not even 1 lakh. Let's say 10,000 people saw it. And then 1 crore views is everyone saw it. But only let's say 10,000 people downloaded it and then installed it. Even that 10,000 is enough for them. Why? YouTube accounts in that 10,000, how many will be there? 100 more. And then all of these, it's like a domino effect. You get infection, there is reinfection, and then they compromise YouTube accounts, Gmail, everything, whatever accounts you have passwords for, all of them gets compromised until the user actually notices them. And then they use to run their operations again. So their investment is giving them back, and it's rotating again and again and again. And yeah, this is one more one. So I just told free antivirus crack download, without Avast and without YouTube. Interestingly, you see LinkedIn here. LinkedIn is supposed to be professional, but yeah, LinkedIn's, when someone's LinkedIn accounts get compromised, that also gets involved in SEO poisoning. So that is one. And then there are other websites which actually are malicious, but they are not abusing any service. They're just putting out websites. Everyone can put out a website. And then they still use SEO to get that on top of everyone else. So now, tracking SEO poisoning. So how do you track this? Now you know what is SEO poisoning. How do you track this? So first step, there are two paths. Source abuse. Source abuse is easy to track. How do why do I say that? YouTube has its own APIs where you can use that. Every day it gives you 10,000 free searches. So using that, you can track what all videos were posted, and you can do all your coding stuff to process that. And this part is, I told it is easy, but to prevent detection, they can go to any extremes also. So you'll need to understand what patterns they use. And once you click on a website or any link or any ad also, you get redirected multiple times in a span of seconds. Why does that happen? So that, I'll tell you one thing, you go and try it out at home. So Google, when you use Google browser, there's something called safe browsing. It shows a deceptive site ahead. Think about it before you go forward, right? So when you see that screen, actually what happens in the backend is every single request, your history gets sent to Google. So that history part, there is a certain amount of limit. And that redirects are to prevent that final site which actually serves the malware to get, to be undetected, basically. And then there is individual links, those other sites which I showed, right? Individual websites. Those are kind of hard, but still it can be detected. And then you just look over source by source. I did YouTube. You guys can take up other sources. I'll give you examples also. GitHub is getting abused. SoundCloud is getting abused. Docker Hub is getting abused. All of these things, what do? Whenever you post, create a repository in GitHub or create a, let's say, image in Docker, it gets indexed on Google for people to search for it. And when people search for keywords like Adobe free crack download, these things will come up. So that is source by source. Use the source's APIs or use something called custom search engine. So to crawl internet, you need not create multiple, you need not know how the web crawling works and all. You can just use APIs. They have their own documentation. You can use them. But these are not free. You'll have to invest some money in it. But it's not, they give free trial also, Google, basically. And then this is Google search engine. You can give sites to search, sites to exclude, a lot of things, and basically it's a programmable search engine. You can give a specific search query, number of queries you want to crawl, all these things you can customize, and that's how it is. And YouTube also has that same search API, search list. So all these have API keys. It's not directly free, but you can still use them. And basically because of that YouTube search API, I got this. So this, here I'm not sure if you are able to see, there are 347 videos in one crawl. That too for how many days? It's just for 1 day. I used to run the same script 4 times a day, and every time I used to get 500, 600 videos at one certain point of time. So it was daily 2,000 videos, malicious videos, all promoting. You can see patterns also. They are using that same. So here you can see 2 different videos with the same name. So all these are again like from different channels again. So that's how Search API gives you data. So this data, so how do you even consume this data? You get malicious video URLs, initial drops from the description. In the video, I don't think I've shown a description, but in description they used to have a link. Only when you click on that link, that malware gets downloaded. So those links you get, and then when you follow the trail, like once you click on the link, where does it redirect? From where does it actually download the sample? It's not from their own server. They are so intelligent. They use Mediafire, they use Google Drive, they use Dropbox, all these free file serving services. and they use they actually give it as encrypted zips. So why do they use encryption? Encryption is basically, it's like when you upload something into VirusTotal, right? Unless until it is actually a exe, it will not run it and do dynamic analysis and all. If you give them an encrypted zip, they won't know the password. So initial detection will be like swayed away. Only after you decrypt it, like using the password in the description itself, any antivirus or they come in. But again, so those samples, a 10 MB archive, when you extract it, it becomes a 800 MB executable. How? They just put in junk. So that all these, there is a limit of how much you can upload to Sandbox also, like 250 MB, something like that. So they make it very big so that even, so download is easy, but execution is also easy, and then there is a anti-detect mechanism which they're using too. And then finally, if you do reverse engineering and if Sandbox works properly, you get C2 servers, and then all the other malware indicators. So how do you use this stuff? Like, I don't talk about IOCs here. You also know how to use IOCs. You just put it into the EDR and it works. But how does malicious video URLs help you? Or how does initial drop URLs help you? So it's a list of URLs, right? And you have content blocking network, like content filtering in your firewalls itself. You give the list of all these to your content filtering, and that will straightforward block it. So one like suggestion here, when you say YouTube is getting abused, you can't completely ban YouTube from your internal firewall network, right? People still use YouTube to watch some educational videos or something. But I saw this new feature in basically Edge, Microsoft Edge, where you can block a very specific URL. Like if you go to Mimic Ads, it's a red teaming tool in GitHub. When you go to Mimic Ads, Edge blocks it. But you visit any other GitHub repository, it still let you view it, right? So that level of, like, it's very granular content filtering which you need to have. That will help you a lot. And the second one, basically, once you get, I was telling malware logs are being sold, right? So from those, you can still find out how the user got infected. One thing is browser history. From browser history, you know what he downloaded. From cookies, you know cookies are stored hierarchically, right? You visit Google, you visit YouTube, all those visited sites, it gets layered on top of each other like a stack. And when malwares exfiltrate, they exfiltrate in the same way. So when you are trying to detect how did someone get compromised, you look at end of the infection cookie, sorry, not infection cookie, the exfiltrated cookies, and you'll find out actual malicious websites which are present. And then search for pirated content, like search for software, search for cracks, all these things, and you'll actually find helpful stuff to detect how the infection happened. And this is how a log looks like. Here you can see Google Chrome's autofills are exfiltrated, and these are two strains of malware, but here you can see autofills, cookies, file grabber, so you can see some internal document, docx, code.txt, important autofills, passwords, process list, user information. So all this information, it basically creates a user fingerprint. Like, do you think if you give me, if I give you my Gmail username and password, you can directly get in? No, right? Google has certain measures of stopping you from even signing in because they have MFA, 2FA, browser fingerprinting, like you have signed in from a new device, just sign in again, all these things they have. So these information, they take it so that they have multiple other techniques. I'll not dig deeper into them. They have techniques to basically even bypass those. So the browser fingerprinting is from the user information. And then, as I told, you can look at cookies, and then you can see how they got actually infected. So this is one cookie example. So here you can see google.com, okrush.com, and then again google.com, and then there is something called karanpc.com. So this is an actual malicious site, which we noticed earlier, and this was the one which was actually serving malware. And then finally, scloud.ws. So this was the place where the final payload was downloaded from. So but just by analyzing cookies from that specific log, we were able to understand how he got infected. So it's basically breadcrumbs left in, and threat intel is basically you investigating it and then combining all the dots and understanding what happened. I mean, you'll actually feel like Tony Stark in that blast scene. He'll redo everything, and then he'll see from where the bullet came or who blasted, something like that, right? So you'll actually feel in that way if you actually do the stuff. And then finally, one-time investigation is fine, but we are in a, if you're in a service-based company, you need to do that same thing again and again and again. But there's a pattern in it, right? So you can automate everything, and then basically it help you. So this is one enormous project which I took up for tracking all that YouTube campaign, all the statistics and all. It was not anyone's research, it was my research. I already published the paper about it, but I'm just telling how I did it. This is the first time I'm presenting. And the parts of it are in 4 different parts. One is the YouTube scraper, how the YouTube scraper I've showed you. And then I get video URLs, video metadata, and then unsorted URLs. I stored them in a database. And then the second one was source of infection detection. I'll not showcase any code, but you just know how I did that, right? You need to automate it, and then you basically get the final delivery URLs from it. And then basically from there is one specific module which I wrote, the malware sample hunter. So it's a proud name which I've given it to myself. And then my code. And then what it does is basically, I told you, right, when you click on one website, it continuously redirects you to multiple others. And sometimes you need to click, and there's a lot of redirection which happens. So that is basically aiming to solve that redirection issue and actually get that malware downloaded. So it's basically a cat and mouse game. You find out that they're using one tactic, you go behind them and solve that, and then they'll be in the next step, which is implementing a new one to basically go ahead of you, right? And then basically once that malware samples are downloaded, the next step is sandboxing, which is basically you have your own sandbox, so that when you upload those samples, you'll see if it is getting detected or not. And then most important step of this, in this sandbox, you shouldn't use existing sandbox like VirusTotal, Triage, or something like that, because when you upload into actual real sources, threat actors will know that they're getting tracked. Even here, they somehow found out that they were tracked, but they will know that you are tracking them, and then they'll try to completely move away from that tactic itself. So you'll need to covertly do all this investigation. It's a mind game in whole. You need to understand how they think so that they don't detect that you are doing something. So yeah, and every day it runs this same script, and it gets this whole, those samples and statistics which I showed. And basically, as I told before, I hate coding, but I still do it via help of ChatGPT and stuff. But recently I found out this very interesting tool called N8N. So some people, anyone knows this? Oh wow, actually someone knows this. So I'll say this is the best thing which ever happened. Every small script which I need to write, without coding, it helps you automate stuff. So getting data from Sheets, how to extract data from Google Sheets, that's still hard, right? You need to go through multiple documentations. They have one node like this, like one Jira issue. So here it is Jira issue, but there they have multiple other things. You can check it out. And basically this one, it enriches the security incidents. How does it do? So in Jira ticket, let's say you have an automation which is creating Jira ticket to have some hash in it. So you extract IPs and domains from the sample, and then you upload it to URL scan. You all know URL scan, hopefully. If you don't know, just look it out, okay? And then there is VirusTotal. Both of these, you upload the domains, and you get both the reports. You merge the reports, and then you basically update that ticket. So this is common data enrichment. I mean, the computer science students might know it. Data enrichment is a keyword they use in data science. So it's something like that. And then this is a very simple one, but this whole workflow which I showed can be implemented in that. You just need to understand what all features are available in that. And the next one, clear fake campaign. So this was, the blog isn't actually loading, but this was actual research published by Sequoia. I can share the blog details later. But the research, what they did was, this is a whole attack chain which they actually use. They compromise WordPress sites, and then they use all this JavaScript injection. They use smart contracts. They're before us. Actually, do you guys use any websites which implement smart contracts? No, but the attackers are very forward. They already use smart contracts to store their infrastructure and stuff. And then finally deliver the malware. So now in their blog, what intrigued me was these 3 entries. So if you have that, these are URL patterns basically. If you give these URL patterns in URL scan, you'll understand the intermediate domains, which is actually redirecting and all these. So these are heuristic-based URL patterns. If you can upload it into your SIEM, and then if it notices any patterns like this, it will alert you. But for me, it was, I want these compromised WordPress sites. Why? Because I'll know what sites are there, and then I'll even prevent users from visiting those sites. So how did I go ahead and research? So here you can see there is a fake Chrome page, fake Chrome update page. When people go ahead and download and install, it's a malware, they get affected, and it's done. The whole, whatever ransomware, infostealer, all these samples get infected, they can execute. Now, this is how URL scan looks. Now, here they have something called HTTP. So when you visit a website, it's not one request and one response, right? A lot happens in the backend. Number of requests to get images, etc., right? So you can track the same thing like this. So in those HTTP transactions, which you can see in URL scan, so the whole thing was, I was talking about Telegram and Steam getting abused, right? So similar to that, smart contracts, there is one simple function which stores information, and when someone calls that smart contract, it gives out that information. So I'm not sure how many of you know about smart contracts. If I speak about smart contracts a lot, it will take up the time. But if a smart contract is called, it's just a request, then they get a response saying, this is the information what you want. And what is that information? It's actually a malicious JavaScript, which gets injected. So that's how it is. And here you can see this whole Binance.dataseed, if it is visible. So Binance, you need to actually visit. It's a SaaS kind of thing. When you call that contract, it gives you a 4 KB of a malicious JavaScript. It gets executed, and then all these, the heuristic-based URL comes here. But before that, how do you get to know even this contracts are getting called, right? So they have a very special feature. When you get the hash of the response, you can search based on the hash. So here, you can see I've searched this hash and found out nearly 7,000 websites having the same hash. So what does that mean? So that specific hash is a contract call. And that is just 41K, not even, excuse me. So that is just 41 bytes. I think it's, so here, I think you'll get the slides later, so you can later look at the URL or all the things which I did. So there is one specific post request which got a response of 41 bytes. So those 41 bytes is like a initiation. So you know how HTTPS works, right? There is some 3-way handshake. So in that first handshake, it acknowledges that, yeah, I am live, just send your public certificate. So similar to that, smart contract also has that 41 bytes saying this is how it is, here you go. Now, when I get the URL hash, and then, so this is the hash of that 31 bytes, and then these are all the websites which actually implement that. Now, where do you expect smart contracts to be used? In crypto websites, crypto platforms, all these things. But you can see there is kimcartoon.lol, venta.land, Ankita designstudio.com. Even though there was a crypto boom, I don't think everyone uses smart contracts, right? So here the issue was that smart contract was actually a malicious call to fetch infected JavaScript. And then I came to know about it. So this one will contain false positives because there are actually legitimate crypto websites which use smart contracts. But you can filter out by looking at this. So you combine this initial tactic which I showed using that hash, and you use that heuristic-based approach which actually they shared. This one. Combining both of those, you can remove false positives also. And yeah, so this is one of the one which actually URL scan captured a screenshot. Later on, they implemented measures so that even if URL scan captures, it will not get detected. But even we still, because of this 41 byte hash, you are still able to find out websites which are actually compromised. And basically, because of that, so there is automation for this again. I'll not deep dive into that. But I got all those 7,000 websites from that. I filtered out the responses, and then I processed them. And then now you can see what are all the sites which got compromised, like YouTube Downloader, Zoom Line Network, all these, and then the URL scan results, and then the domain out of it. So, and then later, basically, in a smart contract, it's something like your transactions only. You give money, it updates the data inside. So think of it as a database, and then when you call that database, it gives you information. This smart contract was something like that. And for you to update the database, you have to pay gas. So gas is something like a transaction fee for them. And that is how they found it, like they use it also. And then for each and every JavaScript, it is obfuscated, obviously. And I mean, even though it was obfuscated, how do you deobfuscate? Any thoughts? How do you deobfuscate a JavaScript? Okay. So you search for JavaScript deobfuscation tools. The first one was the one which they used, and it's very simple. You get the code, you deobfuscate, you get the malicious URL. So here in the third column, it is the whole malicious infrastructure which I got. And then this is bonus code. If you want to take photos, you can take. So this is for scanning the URL scan. So I gave the parameter, which is the hash, and I basically found out all the results and stored in an output file. So this is what it does. And the second one is basically Binance didn't have any APIs to crawl the transactions. So what I did, I downloaded all the HTMLs. So it's a simple crawling. ChatGPT will help you. I can't show that screenshot because I didn't find that screenshot actually of my ChatGPT where I asked for the code. But this is given by that only. Like, who can write this good code? Because it has all the documentation and all what each line of code does. So it was given by ChatGPT. And here you can see transaction HTMLs. From each transaction HTML, I extracted the transaction hash and transaction ID. From there, I was able to get the JavaScript out of it. So here I write it into a response.txt and store it in one separate folder again. And then I'll not, hopefully everyone took a screenshot of it, or if you want. And finally, in that transaction files, there is some specific input called raw soup.find. Have you guys heard of Beautiful Soup? Yeah, it's for crawling, right? So using Beautiful Soup, I got a specific ID called raw input. So that is the input, which is actually the JavaScript, malicious JavaScript. I got all the JavaScripts, and then I'll not bug you more about the same thing, but you go through the investigation which Sequoia did, you will be able to deobfuscate the JavaScript and get actual domains out of it. And that's how I was able to get 579 more infected domains, which contained 95 plus actual malicious JavaScripts. So it was basically 95 transactions. And 4 plus malicious smart contracts. So 4 contracts were basically used to run their infrastructure. And then basically I processed that 7,800 results on today. I mean on the current day. You get that hash, right? That hash, you can still run the investigation. Just before the presentation also I've checked. The campaign is still running, but not ClearFake. It's some other campaign. That ClearFake malware campaign switched to an adware campaign, and I don't know what it has switched to now, but you can still investigate, and then it's still happening. And takeaway still now, use APIs or scripts wherever possible to enrich your information or get information. I've given you some samples, so whatever ideas you have got, brainstorm more, you will get APIs and scripts to do something like that. And don't always rely on something you find in GitHub. We are way past the GitHub area. We are not script kiddies, we are ChatGPT kiddies. So you need to use ChatGPT to write code and basically understand the process of how the malware is delivered. So that lets you actually understand the whole process and track them indefinitely. And all the data found by automations are ingestible. It can be going into SIEM, firewalls, and content filtering systems. So that was it